Alright, so hello everybody, welcome to another Path of Exile video, and today we're gonna do some detonating of the dead. So, I wanted to play something that's a little bit more active now that I've played two different summoners in the Metamorph League, both of which were pretty passive. And I landed on Detonate Dead because I've been eyeballing the new corpse nodes on Necromancer for quite a while, and I also thought that Detonate Dead would just be perfect now that everything has like ludicrously high life, especially if you're sitting in T16s and you have a fully awoken Atlas. I mean, earlier today I managed to roll one of my maps with like 86% increased monster life. That's ridiculous. And Detonate Dead will actually benefit from that, because it detonates 6% of the corpse's maximum life, on top of, you know, the very big hit that Detonate Dead has as base. So when you scale it well enough, you're gonna be doing like stupid damage. Now, I've already spent quite a bit of currency on this character because, well, I just made a lot of currency with the idiot-proof Guardian, so my gear is already pretty good, right? So for the staff, I personally went for the Martyr of Innocence, which is very defensive. It has a ton of block and I can actually divine it higher than that. It has increased fire damage and a ton of flat fire damage to spells, and then if you block, you penetrate 15% fire resistance. It's just a really good staff for this particular build, but it's not necessary. I mean, I ran with a Searing Touch until like level 85 and that cost me 35 chaos. And here is where you're gonna put your Detonate Dead, and you can easily buy 2123 Val Detonate Dead for 15 chaos, or at least I did. And you're gonna link this to the Combustion support, then the Spell Cascade support, as well as Intensify support, Awakened Fire Penetration support, which is probably the cheapest Awakened gem. I bought this one for 37 chaos, I do believe, and finally Spell Echo. This makes it so that you detonate 6 corpses every time, because you cascade them, so instead of detonating 1, you detonate 3, and then you echo it for another 3. Though you can very much detonate more than that if you simply get yourself a helmet that has Detonate Dead, has a 45% chance to detonate an additional corpse. This one, once again, was fairly cheap. I think I bought it for 10 kills, and then I spammed it with Scorched Fossils until I got the Nearby Enemies Have Minus Fire Resistance mod. This is also where I have my custom damage taken, which is at level 8 at the moment. This is linked to Immortal Call for the damage reduction, which is at level 10, then increase duration, and summon Stone Golem for some regen. Though I will most likely switch this over to a Chaos Golem for some physical damage reduction instead. Then for the chest piece, I just went for Combs because it's pretty cheap this league, we don't need the sockets, we do pure fire damage, and we want a lot of life. Then for the amulet, I actually went for the Yoke of Suffering, which makes enemies take 5% increased damage for each type of ailment we've inflicted on them. This is really good because our Detonate Dead has a really good chance to ignite, and because we're a Necromancer, every time we throw a corpse near an enemy, they'll be shocked and chilled. So I'm pretty sure, I'm not actually 100% sure, we can make the enemies take 15% more damage if we have this amulet. Then I currently have a very shitty Opal Ring that I've been trying to craft into something good, but it just does not want to cooperate, so I just have a little bit of resistance on there as of right now, but I would ideally want to get some life on there as well. And the second ring, while slightly spicier because it's a Vermilion ring with flammability on hit, is still not great. So yeah, both of these need to be upgraded still. After that, we have the gloves, and I actually ended up going with Temple gloves that have the hybrid T1 fire and flat fire added against burning enemies mod. This is great because, once again, our Detonate Dead has a pretty good chance to ignite the enemy, so once they're ignited, they're burning, so you get extra flat damage added to the Detonate Dead, and they also have a lot of life, which is cool too, and they have a crit craft, which kind of helps with elemental overload. And here I just socketed a hodgepodge of random stuff, so I have Anger for the extra flat damage, Herald of Ash, which is great for clear, Flame Dash to move around, and a Portal Gem to safely go home. Moving on from there, we have a belt, which is just a big belt with flat and percent life, and it also has some chaos resistance, which is very nice for Metamorph, and some lightning resistance, actually T1 lightning resistance even. And finally we have the boots. I actually took these from the idiot-proof Guardian because I got better ones there, and here's where we're going to socket our Desecrate, which I currently have linked to Empower because I just want to level the Empower. Then Arcane Search at a lower level so the mana requirement isn't too high and we proc it every time we Desecrate, and Spell Cascade so we make enough corpses for the Detonate Dead. Now, if you really want to push this boat into Endgame and you want to do some fat single target damage, you want to get yourself a Sire of Shards as a weapon swap, which makes you fire 4 more projectiles and fire them in a circle, and put Cremation in it, which you're gonna link to number 1, Control Destruction for a bunch of spell damage, Immolate, Combustion, Awakened Fire Penetration, once again, very cheap, and finally Inspiration. Now you don't necessarily need this, I did everything, including Cyrus, with Detonate Dead, but it's just far safer and far more consistent when it comes to single target damage. And just like I said with Volatile Dead, if all you want to do is just use Cremation, you very much can, it will work. you will actually have access to more scaling, because with both Cremation and Volatile Dead, you want to focus on the spell portion, and the detonation portion is kind of just there. Whereas with Detonate Dead, because the detonation is bigger, it's 6% as opposed to the 4% on Cremation and 3% on Volatile Dead, you want to scale both, and the explosion is not a spell, so you can't scale it with spell damage. Which means that you're stuck with fire damage, elemental damage, area damage, and then minion damage if you have spiritual aid, which this build does. But anyway, let's check out the skill tree, which is relatively straightforward, except for the start, because we actually start off by going through the intelligence nodes. And this is because we kind of just don't need any of this. We don't need cast speed because we're a Necromancer and we get a ton of cast speed as we consume corpses, and the explosion portion on Detonate Dead is not a spell, so spell damage doesn't work for it. And we also don't need energy shield and some minion attack and cast speed, so the other side is kind of meh as well. So it's just better to go through the intelligence nodes and save yourself a couple of points. So to start off with, we just pick up some life, some fire damage, area damage. We also pick up the weird mana node, which gives us spell block as well as some chance to block with staves, and we move towards the fire penetration node at the very top. Then as we head towards Templar, we're gonna pick up Elemental Overload, then a bunch of like life nodes, area nodes, fire nodes, as well as a little bit of spell crit, which makes Elemental Overload far more consistent. And then we of course want to pick up Spiritual Aid, which takes minion damage and doubles it up as sort of genetic damage for you, which is great because it scales both portions of Detonate Dead, and we have a lot of minion damage. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a Necromancer. This is also where we're gonna pick up a little bit more chance to block with staves at the bottom left, before finally heading over to the Scion area for a ton of life. Now, when it comes to the jewels, there are 3 that you definitely want to run if you're doing this setup. You want to get a Watcher's Eye with fire damage leached as a life while affected by anger, because you can't get a leech amulet if you're running Yoke of Suffering. And then you want to get 2 Might of the Meek and socket them next to Scion, which will first of all buff the resistance nodes as well as the life regen nodes, but most importantly it will make these 3 life nodes give you 10%, these 4 life nodes give you 7%, and it's just in the right spot to not break Constitution. And as far as the other jewels are concerned, just go for life, fire damage, area damage, minion damage, that kind of stuff. And finally we have the Ascendancy, so you most definitely want to start off with Planebringer, which makes it so that you have increased area of effect if you've consumed a corpse, and then if there is a corpse nearby, you do 10% more damage and enemies do 10% less damage. And you also want to take it because it leads into the big boy node, Corpse Pact. This one is kind of nuts, so what this does is it makes you do 30% increased damage if you've consumed a corpse recently, then it gives you 2% increased attack and cast speed for each corpse you've consumed recently, and remember, you're consuming at least 6 with each cast, so it basically makes Spell Echo instant. It also shocks and chills enemies near your corpses, and the ailments are actually quite substantial. It's a 10% slow and 15% increased damage taken, and finally, corpses you spawn have 50% increased maximum life. This is basically just a more damage multiplier on the detonation portion of Detonate Dead, because if you spawn corpses with 50% increased life, the corpse explosion part of Detonate Dead is gonna do 50% more damage. And that's pretty much all you need. The other 2 nodes are up to you, so just pick whatever you like. Now I know Detonate Dead isn't for everyone because it's a 2-step build, right? First you need to desecrate, then you detonate, desecrate, detonate, desecrate, detonate, and so on and so on and so on. But if you're interested in at least a little bit, I would highly recommend you try this out, because my god, I did not expect to have this much fun with Detonate Dead. It is just stupid. The amount of cast speed you get as a Necromancer is just idiotic. I mean, it is so very fast. And it just blows up the entire screen every time. It is magnificent. The damage is unfortunately starting to fall off a little bit if I'm doing T16s, especially if I have some stupid mods on them and I have a fully awoken Atlas at level 8, but I think I can fix it. I'm trying to fix it the best I can because I want to stick to Detonate Dead all the way. I don't want to do Cremation, it's just not as much fun. And don't get me wrong, it's not bad, it's still good. You can zoom and boom in T16, so no problem. It's just that the bosses take a little bit longer, especially if you don't use Val Detonate Dead. And Metamorphs, well, are just Metamorphs. I'm pretty sure earlier today I ran into a Metamorph that had like twice as much life as Cyrus. So, I mean, just dumbo stupid Metamorphs, I guess. Now, when it comes to defenses on this build, they're not amazing, but they're good enough to do pretty much everything unless you build a stupid Metamorph. So there's almost 7,000 life, which hopefully is gonna be at least 7,000 life once I level up a little bit and upgrade my rings. I don't have a ton of armor or evasion and I just have basic res, but what I've tried to do is stack some blocks. So I have 54% attack block and 25% spell block. That combined with the leech from the Anger Watcher's Eye means that I most of the time recover back to full before getting hit again. And other than that, I know the build is gonna do great in Delve, even though I haven't taken it that deep yet, because, well, it has corpse detonation, which is amazing. Because some of the most dangerous things in Delve are actually on death effects, especially as you go deeper and deeper. Plus, you know, the enemy health goes up, so your damage goes up as well. And even though I was a little bit worried about blighted maps with this one, it's actually really good and really fun, because you basically just need to desecrate once, and then you just detonate down the line all the way to the portal. Also, since the blight mobs have quite a bit of health on them, you can absolutely destroy blighted bosses. That was actually a pleasant surprise, because blighted bosses, especially some of them, have a ton of health. And that is pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and once again, if you think this looks cool, do give it a shot, because it's just a ton of fun. It's just fast, it's entertaining, I highly recommend it. But anyway, that's it from me, and I will see you some other time. Bye bye.